Once upon a time, in a small, beautiful village surrounded by rolling green hills in eastern Nigeria, there lived a young boy named Emeka. Emeka was the firstborn son of Chief Yud and Mama Emeka. Chief Yud was a farmer, and though he worked very hard, he didn't make much money. Mama Emeka, on the other hand, sold vegetables at the local market. Every day, she would wake up early and walk to the market with a basket full of fresh vegetables to sell. But even with all her hard work, there was never enough money to buy the things they needed. The family lived in a small, old house made of mud and thatch. It wasn't a fancy house, but it was a home full of love, laughter, and hope. Every evening, after a long day of work, Chief Yud would come home tired and worn out, but always smiling because he knew he was doing his best. Mama Emeka, even though she was also tired from her long hours at the market, always found time to smile and make sure her children were well taken care of. Chief Yud worked for rich landowners in the village. He cleared their land, planted crops, and took care of the farm. But the work was very hard, and the pay was small. Sometimes, after working for many hours, he would come home with no money at all because his pay had been taken away. On those nights, the family would have nothing to eat. Emeka would see the sadness in his father's eyes, and it made him feel bad. He hated seeing his father walk miles every day, only to return with no money. He knew that his father worked very hard, but it never seemed to be enough. Mama Emeka also worked hard, selling vegetables at the market. She would wake up before the sun came up and start preparing food for her children. After that, she would walk to the market to sell her vegetables. But the money she made was never enough to buy everything the family needed. There were many days when Emeka and his younger siblings didn't have enough to eat. Sometimes, Mama Emeka would give them the food she had planned to sell at the market. This way, they wouldn't go hungry. It made her sad to do this, but she loved her children and wanted them to be strong and hopeful. Emeka, though young, understood what was happening. He was just 16 years old, but he could already see how hard his parents were working, and how little they had to show for it. He knew that things had to change, and he wanted to help. Every day, he watched his parents struggle, and it made him feel sad and frustrated. He wanted to do something, but he didn't know what. Even though Emeka had finished his primary school education, his family could not afford to send him to secondary school. He dreamed of continuing his education and helping his younger brothers and sisters. But that dream seemed far away. Emeka knew that if he stayed in school, his parents would continue to struggle. So, after much thought, he made a very hard decision. He decided to stop going to school and help his family instead. It broke his heart to do this, but he knew it was the only way to make sure they had enough to eat and could live a better life. One day, a phone call came that would change everything. Chief Yud's cousin, Oga Chucks, who lived in the big city, called to say that he had a job offer for Emeka. Oga Chucks was a successful businessman who sold building materials. He said that if Emeka came to the city, he could work with him and learn how to run a business. After working for Oga Chucks for 7 years, Emeka would be able to start his own business and live a better life. This was the chance Emeka had been waiting for. Emeka's parents were so happy when they heard the news. They knew that this was a big opportunity for their son. They were proud of him for making such a difficult decision, and they hoped this would be the start of a better future for the family. On the day Emeka left for the city, Chief Yud and Mama Emeka sat him down in their little living room. They told him how proud they were of him, but also reminded him that life in the city would be hard. They gave him their blessings and prayed that he would always stay kind and true to his roots. Emeka said goodbye to his parents and boarded the bus to the city. As he sat by the window, he watched the village slowly disappear behind him. It was a sad moment because he was leaving everything he had ever known. But he was also excited because he knew he was doing this for his family. The journey to the city was long, but Emeka couldn't stop thinking about the future. When he arrived in the city, Emeka was amazed. The city was so big. There were tall buildings everywhere, and the roads were filled with cars and people rushing around. It was loud and busy, and Emeka felt a little scared, but he was also excited. This was where dreams came true. He had arrived in a place where anything seemed possible. Emeka's cousin, Oga Chuks, welcomed him with open arms. His house was huge and beautiful, much bigger than anything Emeka had ever seen. There were shiny cars in the driveway, and the inside of the house was full of expensive furniture. Emeka couldn't believe his eyes. For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. He was treated well, and he was eager to learn everything he could about business. But soon, life in the city started to feel different. While Oga Chuks was kind to Emeka, his wife, and their two sons, Peter and Paul, didn't like him. They made Emeka do all the hard chores in the house, like washing dishes, cleaning, and even washing the cars. Peter and Paul made fun of him because he was from the village. They called him names and treated him like he was not important. But Emeka never complained. He remembered his parents' advice to stay kind and work hard. Every day, Emeka woke up early to do his chores before heading to work in the shop. At night, he would stay up late to iron clothes or finish other tasks. His meals were small, and sometimes he went to bed hungry, but he kept working. Emeka knew that if he didn't work hard, his family's dreams wouldn't come true. He promised himself that he would do whatever it took to succeed. Though Emeka worked hard, Peter and Paul didn't like that their father praised him. They began to make plans to get rid of Emeka. They didn't want him in the house or the shop. They wanted him gone. Every day, they made his life more difficult, hoping that Emeka would leave. But Emeka didn't give up. He stayed focused on his goal to learn, to work hard, and to make his family proud. He knew that his parents had sacrificed so much for him, and he would not let them down. 5 years passed, and Emeka's hard work began to pay off. Oga Chuks was proud of him, and the business was growing. Emeka became known as the most dedicated worker in the shop. But even though things were getting better, Peter and Paul still didn't like Emeka. They were jealous of him and wanted him gone. They made his life even harder, hoping he would live on his own. But Emeka stayed strong. He knew that his dream was closer than ever, and he would finish his work for his family. Little did Emeka know, the hardest part of his journey was yet to come. He didn't know that soon, he would face the biggest challenge of all. But no matter what happened, Emeka was determined to succeed. He had come too far to turn back now. As days turned into weeks in the city, Emeka's bright excitement began to fade. When he first arrived in the city, he had big dreams. He wanted to work hard, learn, and help his family. But now, the city felt different. The bright lights and busy streets that once seemed like a place of endless opportunities now felt cold and far away. The work was hard, and the people around him didn't treat him well. The city, once full of hope, had become like a big cage. No matter how much he worked, he felt stuck. Every day, Emeka woke up at the crack of dawn. His job was never ending. He had to clean the house, wash the cars, and cook meals for the family. While Oga Chucks, his cousin, went on business trips, Emeka was left behind to run the shop alone. The work was exhausting. It was hard to keep up with all the chores, but Emeka pushed through because he had made a promise to his parents. He had to work hard so that one day they could live better lives, free from the struggles they had always faced. However, the family he worked for wasn't as kind as he had hoped. Oga Chucks, at first, had treated him well, but over time, he stopped noticing how badly Emeka was being treated by his wife and their two sons, Peter and Paul. They didn't see Emeka as a relative to care for, instead, they treated him as a servant. They gave him all the chores and never said thank you. They would laugh at him for coming from the village, mocking his way of speaking and the dreams he held. Emeka tried his best to stay strong, but the constant taunting and humiliation wore him down. Peter and Paul were jealous of him. They didn't like that their father would praise Emeka for working hard. They didn't like that their father trusted Emeka to run the shop, and they especially didn't like that Emeka was gaining their father's affection. They wanted the respect, the money, and the business for themselves. The more Emeka worked, the more Peter and Paul grew angry and resentful. They would leave their dirty laundry around the house and expect Emeka to clean it. If he didn't, they would make fun of him, calling him lazy and unimportant. They would whisper cruel things behind his back and laugh whenever he made a mistake. It seemed like they were always trying to find ways to make his life harder. One evening, after a long day at the shop, Emeka returned home to find that his chores had doubled. The kitchen was dirty, the living room was messy with dishes everywhere, and the cars needed washing. His body was tired from working the entire day, but he couldn't rest. He had no choice but to clean everything. He scrubbed the kitchen floor, washed the dishes, and cleaned the cars, all while feeling his energy drain away. His mind wasn't just tired from the work, it was exhausted from the constant emotional pain he was dealing with. As he walked, he could hear Peter and Paul laughing from their room. Their voices made him feel even worse. It was as if they were mocking him, making his hard work feel useless. He felt like he was sinking deeper into a dark hole. But Emeka didn't stop. He kept going because he remembered the promise he made to his parents. He couldn't give up now. The end of his 7 years was near, and he believed it would all be worth it. But Peter and Paul had their own plans. They were determined to get rid of Emeka, to make sure he went back to the village. They didn't want him in the city anymore. They didn't want him to have any success. They wanted to take everything for themselves. They couldn't stand seeing Emeka succeed when they were still stuck in their old ways. One night, when Emeka was at the shop, Peter and Paul went to their mother, Mama Chucks, with an idea. Mama Chucks didn't like Emeka. She hated the way her husband always praised him. She hated how Emeka seemed to be everything her sons were not. When her sons told her their plan, she hesitated at first. But then she saw how it could finally get rid of Emeka for good, and she agreed. "I have a plan," Mama Chuck said, her voice low. "We can make him leave for good. All we have to do is get him out of the shop and send him back to the village." Peter and Paul were excited. They had waited for this moment. They wanted Emeka gone, and they were willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. Mama Chuck smiled a wicked smile and told them what they needed to do. They planned to set Emeka up. Every day, Emeka would take a bag of money to the bank, just like he always did. But this time, they would have him robbed. They would hire a group of robbers to stop him on the way to the bank, take the money, and leave him on the side of the road. Then, they would tell Oga Chucks that Emeka had lost the money. They would say he had failed, and that would be the end of him. The plan sounded perfect to Peter and Paul. They couldn't wait to see it happen. Mama Chucks wasted no time. She contacted the robbers and promised them a lot of money for their help. The next day, the plan was set in motion. Emeka had no idea what was coming. He woke up that morning, just like any other, and prepared to take the money to the bank. He put the money into a bag and placed it on his bike. He was ready to go, but before he could leave, something happened that would change everything. As Emeka was riding his bike down the street, a sleek, black car came speeding towards him. The car slammed to a stop in front of him, and the doors flew open. 5 masked men with guns jumped out and surrounded him. "Get on the ground," one of them shouted. Emeka froze. His heart raced, and his body trembled with fear. He didn't know what to do. He wanted to run, to fight back, but he was too scared. He thought of his father's words, "Being alive is more important than anything else." And so, shaking, Emeka knelt on the ground and handed over the bag of money. The robbers grabbed it and jumped back into the car, speeding off before Emeka could even react. Emeka stood there, his mind racing. How could this happen? He had been so careful. He thought he had done everything right. But now, everything was slipping away. He had lost the money. He didn't know how he was going to face Oga Chucks. Later that day, Emeka returned to the shop. His heart was heavy with guilt as he told Oga Chucks what had happened. He explained how he had been robbed, how he had tried to protect the money, but how the robbers had taken it anyway. Tears filled his eyes as he spoke. He felt like he had failed. He had let down the man who had given him a chance. But Oga Chucks didn't comfort him. Instead, he became angry. "How could you be so careless?" he shouted. "You've ruined everything. You've wasted my money." His voice was filled with rage, and Emeka could see the disappointment in his eyes. "You're no longer welcome here. Get out." Emeka stood frozen. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. After all the years of hard work, after everything he had sacrificed, Oga Chucks was casting him out. The tears he had been holding back finally fell, and he felt a pain in his chest that was worse than anything he had ever felt before. As he walked out of the shop, Emeka heard Peter and Paul laughing behind him. Their laughter echoed in his ears as he left, and in that moment, he knew the truth. They had planned this. They had used the robbers to get rid of him, to make sure he would fail. Oga Chucks has already made it clear to him. He should not come back to the house unless he found the money. Or he should just go to the village. The money is now his settlement. Emeka walked down the road, his heart broken. He had lost everything, his dignity, his hopes, and his dreams. But as he walked, he made a silent promise to himself. He would not let this defeat him. He would rise again. The streets of Lagos were unforgiving. Emeka had always heard stories about the tough life in the city, but nothing had prepared him for what he encountered. He had no family, no money, and nowhere to stay. The bustling city, with its tall buildings and fast-moving cars, felt like a world far away from everything he had known. The grand houses and luxury cars that had once amazed him now seemed like distant memories. Lagos had a way of swallowing you up, leaving behind only the strong and resilient. For days, Emeka wandered the streets, looking for any kind of work. He slept in abandoned buildings, where the cold wind and mosquitoes made it almost impossible to sleep. Each night, he lay awake, feeling alone and uncertain about his future. But every morning, when he woke up, hope filled his heart again. The thought of his family, back in the village, kept him going. They believed in him. They believed that Emeka would find a way to escape the life of poverty and make a better life for them all. He couldn't bear the thought of returning home a failure. He had to succeed. With no other option, Emeka started doing any kind of job he could find. He carried heavy loads for construction workers, cleaned houses, and even washed cars on busy streets. The work was hard, and there was never enough money. But Emeka had learned to endure hardship. His parents had taught him how to keep going, no matter how difficult life became. Every day on the streets of Lagos was a reminder of the promises he had made. He had promised to never give up, to keep fighting for his family's future. One day, while working on a construction site, Emeka was painting a wall in an unfinished building when a sleek, luxury car pulled up. The man who stepped out of the car was dressed in a sharp suit, his shoes shining in the sunlight. At first, Emeka didn't recognize him. But the man noticed something about Emeka's work ethic. He was focused, diligent, and worked with care, even though he was just a street hustler. The man's name was Tony. He owned a successful painting company in Lagos, and he had come to check on a project he was overseeing. As he watched Emeka from a distance, he couldn't help but be impressed by the young man's dedication. There was something about Emeka, his quiet determination, his hunger for success, that stood out to Tony. After watching him work for a while, Tony decided to approach him. "Hey there," Tony called out, walking toward Emeka, who was wiping sweat from his forehead. "You're working really hard. Where are you from?" Emeka was a little surprised. He had grown used to people ignoring him or looking down on him, but Tony's voice was different. There was no mockery, just curiosity and kindness in his tone. "I'm from the village," Emeka replied, wiping his hands on his pants. "I came to the city to make something of myself, but things haven't been easy." Tony nodded, as though he understood. "I can tell. You're dedicated, and I like that. Tell you what, I've got a few projects going on in the city. Why don't you come work for me? I'll pay you well, and who knows, maybe we can work together in the future." Emeka felt a rush of hope in his chest. This was the opportunity he had been praying for. But he didn't want to seem too eager. He had learned to be cautious in the city, to never show how desperate he really was. "I appreciate it, sir," Emeka said, trying to sound calm and composed. "But I need to work as soon as possible. I can't afford to waste any time." Tony smiled, sensing the urgency in Emeka's voice. "All right, let's see what you've got. I'll give you a trial run. If you do well, I'll bring you on full time." Emeka's heart swelled with gratitude. This was the chance he had been waiting for. For the next few weeks, he worked tirelessly for Tony. He proved himself day after day, showing his dedication and passion for his work. Tony saw the potential in Emeka, and soon, he offered him a permanent position in his company. He taught Emeka the ins and outs of the business, showing him how to run a paint shop, manage clients, and organize big projects. Emeka quickly became one of Tony's most trusted employees. He learned fast, and his work ethic set him apart from others. Tony saw something in Emeka that went beyond just being a good worker. He saw the makings of a successful businessman. Tony believed that Emeka had the potential to build something much bigger than he could ever imagine. One day, as they sat down together to discuss a new project, Tony looked at Emeka with a serious expression on his face. "Emeka," Tony said, "I've been watching you closely. You've got the drive, the intelligence, and the determination to succeed. I want to give you something, a chance to build your own future. I'm offering you one of my shops. It's worth millions. But there's a catch." Emeka's heart raced. This was the opportunity he had always dreamed of, but hearing it from Tony's mouth made it feel unreal. "What's the catch?" Emeka asked, his voice trembling with excitement. "You have to prove that you can turn it into a profitable business," Tony explained. "You need to make 3 times the amount of money I invested in the shop in a year and a half. If you do that, the shop is yours. If not, I'll take it back. Are you willing to take that risk?" Emeka didn't hesitate for a moment. "Yes, sir. I'll do it." With that, Tony handed Emeka the keys to the shop, along with a large sum of money to help him get started. It was everything Emeka had dreamed of. The boy from the village, who had once been humiliated and cast aside, now had the chance to build a legacy. Emeka worked day and night to make the business a success. He poured his heart and soul into it, reinvesting every penny into the shop. He expanded the business, brought in more clients, and made sure the quality of his work was second to none. Slowly but surely, Emeka built something incredible. Within a year, Emeka had not only met Tony's expectations, but he had exceeded them. His paint shop had become one of the most successful and profitable in Lagos. Tony was amazed by Emeka's success. He had proven that he wasn't just a hard worker, he had become a businessman in his own right. In recognition of Emeka's hard work, Tony offered to partner with him on future projects. As Emeka's business grew, so did his wealth. He bought a mansion in a prestigious area of Lagos, and his life changed completely. He was no longer just a boy from the village, he was now a self-made millionaire. Emeka had become the man he had always dreamed of being. But there was something even more important to Emeka than his wealth. It was time to return home. Emeka hadn't seen his parents in years. He missed them more than he could say. But he knew that returning home as a failure would break their hearts. Now, he had the success he promised them. He could give them the life they deserved. He packed his bags, hopped into his luxury car, and made the long journey back to the village. When he arrived, the village looked just as he remembered it: simple, peaceful, and full of memories. But this time, Emeka had something different. He had pride in his heart, knowing that he could finally take care of his family. As Emeka drove through the village, word quickly spread that he had returned as a millionaire. People gathered in the streets, staring in disbelief as his car passed by. The boy who had once been looked down upon was now a symbol of success. When Emeka arrived at his parents' house, Mama Emeka ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "Emeka, my son," she cried, embracing him tightly. "Is this really you?" Emeka smiled and hugged his mother back. "It's me, Mama. I've come back to take care of you both." His father, Chief Yud, stood at the door, eyes wide with pride and amazement. "Emeka, he said, his voice full of emotion, "You've made us proud." The entire village gathered around to celebrate Emeka's return. As he stood there, surrounded by his family and the people he had once known, Emeka realized that the struggles, the betrayal, and the pain he had endured had all been worth it. He had kept his promise to his parents. But Emeka wasn't bitter. He was stronger, wiser, and determined not to repay evil with evil. He had learned many valuable lessons along the way. Emeka's journey had taught him that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how many times you fall, it's not about staying down, it's about rising again. Emeka handed his parents a bundle of money, the reward for his hard work. "This is for you," he said. "For everything you've done for me." And with that, Emeka walked away, leaving behind his past and looking forward to an even brighter future. Back at Oga Chuck's house, things were falling apart. After Emeka had been chased out, Peter and Paul were free to do whatever they wanted. No one was there to stop them anymore. They took money from the shop and spent it carelessly, without a second thought. They were living in a world of luxury, with no concern for the future. They became addicted to alcohol, partying every night at the club, wasting money on drinks, and giving away huge amounts of cash to girls. Their lives became one long spree, as they bought houses, flashy cars, and expensive jewelry for their girlfriends. For a few years, everything seemed to be going well for them. But the joy was short-lived. Without Emeka's hard work keeping the business afloat, the company started to collapse. The shop's profits dropped, and soon, they couldn't afford to keep up with their lavish lifestyle. They had no more money, no more business, and no more pride. As the business struggled, their father, Oga Chucks, fell ill. The stress of watching his business crumble and his sons waste everything he had worked for took a heavy toll on him. One day, he had a heart attack and died. The loss of their father hit Peter and Paul hard. Suddenly, everything they had worked for was gone. They no longer had the luxury cars or the fancy houses. They sold everything they owned to pay off debts, settle funeral expenses, and try to survive. But it wasn't enough. Life became unbearable. Peter and Paul found themselves and their mother living in a tiny, run-down room in a poor neighborhood of Lagos. The city that had once been a place of excitement and opportunity now felt like a prison. They had no money, no future, and no way out. Their reckless actions had led them to ruin. They were close to becoming beggars, struggling to survive in a city that didn't care about them anymore. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. They heard a car horn outside their house. At first, they thought it was just another car passing by, but when they rushed outside to see who it was, they were shocked. It was Emeka. The same village boy they had chased away from their home a few years ago was now standing before them. But this time, he wasn't the poor, struggling boy they had mocked. Emeka had become a big man. A millionaire. For several moments, Peter, Paul, and their mother were speechless. They stood frozen, unable to say a word. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The young boy they had treated so badly, the one they had humiliated and thrown out of their house, was now standing there in front of them, successful and rich. Their mother, overcome with emotion, fell to her knees. She cried out, begging Emeka for forgiveness, her heart filled with regret. Peter and Paul, too, joined their mother, ashamed of how they had treated him. They knew they had wronged him. They had been blind to the consequences of their actions, and now everything had turned around. Emeka was no longer the poor boy they had looked down on. He was the one who had made it, while they had lost everything. Emeka looked at them quietly for a moment. He could see the pain and regret in their eyes, but he wasn't angry. He had learned that it was not worth holding on to bitterness or hatred. With a calm, steady voice, he spoke a few words to them before turning to leave. "I shall never repay evil with evil," Emeka said, his voice strong and clear. Then, without another word, he reached into his car and pulled out bundles of money. He handed them to Peter and Paul, telling them to use it to help themselves. It was a gift, not out of revenge, but out of kindness. Emeka's heart was filled with compassion, and he wanted them to learn from their mistakes. Without waiting for their reply, Emeka turned and walked back to his car. As he got into the driver's seat and started the engine, Peter, Paul, and their mother stood there in silence, watching as he drove away. They were left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret and the weight of their actions. For the rest of their lives, they would remember that moment, the moment when they realized the true cost of their greed and cruelty. They had lost everything, and now, they were left to face the punishment of their own choices. Emeka had forgiven them, but they could not forgive themselves. From that day on, Peter, Paul, and their mother lived in the torment of knowing what they had done. Every time they saw Emeka's success, they were reminded of the wrong they had done to him. And though they tried to rebuild their lives, they could never shake the regret that followed them wherever they went. Emeka had risen from the ashes of his past, and while he had forgiven those who wronged him, the lesson was clear. No matter how bad life gets, it's not about staying down, it's about rising again, with kindness, strength, and the determination to never repay evil with evil. And Emeka, in his success, had proven that no matter where you come from, you can overcome anything if you stay true to yourself. Thank you for watching this story. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Tap the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Thank you, and stay blessed.